All right, very good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the second in a series of 5 workforce development courses sponsored by the Florida Department of Transportation. Last month, we had a great webinar on artificial intelligence and transportation, and the recording is available for all of you who missed it to listen to. Today, we're going to talk about mobility on demand, and we're going to talk about what it is and provide some case use examples. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Sara Hendricks. I'm the Deputy Program Director of the Transportation Options Program at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at University of South Florida in Tampa. I have over 20 years of experience in transportation planning, and prior to my work at University of South Florida, I was employed in the private sector for traffic engineering companies. And I think we can go to the next slide just to kind of give you a heads up. We are going to have a poll in a moment. So make sure that you have your phones handy for a Mentimeter poll, or if you choose not to use Mentimeter, you can always use the chat as well. So up on your screen, you'll see the next workforce development courses that we're going to be offering. July 2nd is First Mile, Last Mile Safety, where we're going to be discovering strategies to improve safety and accessibility in short connections to transit. And I'm in the process of lining up some additional exciting guest speakers to share their expertise with us. And then in August, we were going to be talking about transit ridership, discerning ridership trends, and identifying strategies to grow and sustain transit use. And you can access these. The registration is for free. All you have to do is go to the link on the screen, the Commuter Services website, to sign up. And there's also the QR codes that you can use as well. And then we have one final workforce development course on micromobility that will be featured on September 3rd. These are all Thursdays from 1 to 2, by the way. And micromobility, we're going to be talking about promoting effective integration of micromobility like bicycles, e-bikes, and electric scooters into transportation systems. All right. So I introduced myself. Let me now introduce today's speakers. We have Carl Weckenmann. He is the Director of Planning and Development at Lynx, where he joined last summer. Carl has over 20 years of experience in public transportation planning, including the last 13 in the state of Florida at both the Jacksonville Transportation Authority and as a consultant at Nelson Nygaard.
Micromobility agreement.
And Adolfo Covelli was able to connect with us. That's great. I know that there were some connectivity issues before. Now we can introduce you. Adolfo, you are with St. Lucie County's Transit Service, ART. Mr. Covelli, I'm sorry, is the transit director. Adolfo joined the county in July of 2020. During his last 6 years with the county, Adolfo has been moving transit forward by instituting innovative programs and projects that are helping to connect our communities and economic centers throughout St. Lucie County. Adolfo's responsibilities include planning, organizing, and managing the Area Regional Transit, or ART, system. Okay. So these are our course objectives. I am going to introduce some basic mobility on demand concepts initially. Then Adolfo Covelli and Carl Weckenmann will acquaint us with their microtransit programs. And if you have questions, please use the chat. You can put them in the chat and we can answer questions as we go. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time towards the end for some discussion and some additional questions. And then we'll wrap it up with some key takeaways from our conversation. Next slide, please. So here is where we have a poll. Grab your phone and use the Mentimeter, or if you prefer, you can use the chat. The Mentimeter will create for us a word cloud, which is kind of fun. So this is the question. If you were to describe mobility on demand in 1 to 3 words, how would you describe it? Leona says government Uber. Okay. Accessibility, popular concept, technology enabled, convenience, ambitious, efficient access, cool, connected. These are all great terms. Not necessarily cheaper. Okay. Our speakers will weigh in on that one, I think. Efficient access, curb to curb. Useful, controversial, cost saving. All right. These are some great words. And it looks like convenient kind of rises to the top in terms of the number of people that identified that as a feature of mobility on demand. And Rebecca says, very popular and convenient. Thank you, Rebecca. All right. Okay, so what is mobility on demand? So there's actually a number of definitions out there from many organizations, including the United States Department of Transportation and their Intelligent Transportation Systems Joint Program Office, the Federal Transit Administration, Office of Research, Demonstration, and Innovation has a definition, as well as those developed by university researchers. This is just kind of a compilation of characteristics that describe mobility on demand. So for example, customers can access trips, goods, and services on demand. Mobility on demand supports the complete trip. It's integrated and connected as a multimodal network. It's customer focused and personalized. It's the tone of the service is that it's safe, it's affordable, reliable, efficient, and carefree as a mobility ecosystem. It uses real-time data and leverages intelligent transportation systems. It's accessible to all travelers via a mobile app or website. And some examples include public transit, microtransit, autonomous vehicles, transportation network companies, car share, and on-demand van pool, and more. So here are some common characteristics of mobility on demand. Dynamic real-time routing and scheduling. Vehicles are used, usually shuttles or vans, wheelchair accessible vehicles, either designated with pickup and drop-off locations or providing curb-to-curb service. There is software for on-demand digital platform and customer-facing smartphone apps. There are multiple contact options for the customers to use, including telephone dispatch or texting or a touchscreen kiosk. Typically, you can request to ride now, and typically these rides are shared rides. And some more common characteristics. It can be designed as a first mile, last mile, and timed for seamless transit or to and from transit. Separate fare structure from the fixed route transit. In some cases, there's a subsidy. There are agreements with vendors, partnerships with stakeholder organizations. Typically, it has its own set of marketing materials and outreach. There are service parameters in digital platform that can be quickly updated, and these include things like the geo-fenced service areas, the service hours, the fare, and the eligibility. And oftentimes there are eligibility requirements. And then at the bottom here in blue, this is to remind us that mobility on demand is a rapidly evolving service type. And for example, some mobility on demand services are transitioning from drivers and the use of other personnel towards autonomous vehicles and electric autonomous vehicles as well. So for purposes of this webinar, for mobility on demand. We're going to be focusing today on microtransit. That is a subset of mobility on demand. And so before we launch into our use cases, we just have one question for you, and that is, if your agency were to implement a microtransit mobility on demand service, what problem or problems would you be trying to solve? And there are some examples on the screen that you can select. And there's also an other selection, in which case you can elaborate by putting your answer in the chat box. Thanks, Leona. First mile, last mile gaps. Rebecca says transit deserts coverage. Low performing fixed routes. Special populations. Okay. And it's possible that you may be wanting to solve more than one problem at the same time. Okay, looks like first mile, last mile gaps tend to be the problem that most people are thinking about. All right. All right, Adolfo, it's all yours.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Adolfo Covelli. I'm the transit director here in St. Lucie County, and just going to give you a little bit about our area and our team. So just a quick starters, we're made up of a team of six team members at the county, myself, an operations manager. We have an admin assistant, a grants coordinator, a program specialist, and myself. There's 6 of us total. We sub all of our work out to MV Transportation. They're our contractor for our fixed route, our micro transit, and our paratransit. So part of the reason we started running micro transit back in 2020 is some of you guys had said to transit deserts. So we have a county of 572 square miles. So it's very hard to service the entire county with fixed route buses, obviously due to the cost of the buses and the large area. Here in St. Lucie County, we're made up of the cities of Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie, and St. Lucie Village. The city of Port St. Lucie is the 6th largest city in Florida. While we continue to have people move here, a lot of people are still moving into St. Lucie County from South Florida and also from the Northeast United States, both because it's kind of expensive to live where they're living, so they move to St. Lucie County. And in the same breath, we're having people leave St. Lucie County because, the taxes have gotten expensive and it's gotten overcrowded. So our local residents are moving to the Carolinas and Tennessee, and we have more people moving here from down south and from the Northeast. We a little bit. So we are part of the Treasure Coast. St. Lucie County is on the east coast of Florida, about an hour north of Palm Beach County. Below us is Martin County, and above us is Indian River County. And then the 3 counties, including us, we make up the entire Treasure Coast. And just to give everyone an idea, so we know what we're talking about, the entire Treasure Coast is fare-free for transit. All 3 counties do not charge a fare for transit. Next slide, please. Here's a map of our service area. We have 8 fixed routes that operate Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday from 8 to 4. We do not have Sunday service. We also have 3 micro transit zones, which you could see in the zones 1, 2, and 3. They're color coordinated. Those zones run Monday through Friday from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then the city of Fort Pierce, which I was talking about earlier, they're that little freebie service. So that's a downtown Fort Pierce area. If you'll see that shaded turquoise color, they run what's called freebie. We also have which are the Teslas. We also run paratransit services for ADA and TD. And we have a van pool program for employees and employers, and we have a couple other small programs that we run. And then on the next slide, I'll show you the 3 zones split up. So here's our county 3 zones. Zone 1 is the first one, obviously. It was in the southern part of the county. And then we connected with Zone 2 and then further after Zone 3. If you see the red dots, so again, 600 square mile county, zones are pretty large, 35 square miles, 30 square miles. So we didn't want to travel from the south end of the county to the north end of the county, but we knew there was a need. We had people that lived in the southern parts of the county and the northern parts of the county, and in the middle of the county is where a lot of our services are, the health department, mental hospitals, and we were having trouble getting people to those zones. So what we did was we created connection points. So yeah, we definitely get you a copy, and Betty. The connection points, those 3 dots on the left and the 2 dots on the right, are how you traverse in between zones. So if you were in zone 1 and the bottom of zone 1 and you wanted to get to the top of zone 2, you would take a ride to the transit. We have 3 transfer points, which are one's an intermodal facility and 2 are park and rides. So you'd book a trip to the park and ride or the intermodal facility and the van would pick you up at your door to door, take you to the connection point, and then a van would come from the other zone to bring you to your final destination. You can also do the same thing from zones 2 to 3. Just to give you an idea on how important this service is, and we'll get into our lessons learned and all that, but just a quick story. We had a rider that moved here a couple of years ago from Carolina, and she lived outside of the north part of zone 3. So she was in the top of the picture on the right. And she had a car accident and totaled her vehicle, and she was 7 months pregnant and had 2 children, and she worked on the southern end of the county, and her kids went to school on the southern end of the county. She called us. She didn't know we had transit, and we told her, hey, it'll work. It works if you want it to work, if you need it to work, not if you want it to work. So if you need it, you'll get it. So this rider would walk 2 or 3 blocks every morning with her pregnant and 2 kids to zone 3. We would take her to the bottom of zone 3 and another van would pick her up, drop her 2 kids off at a charter school, and then take her to work. And she did this back and forth every day for months. She ended up sending in a compliment, and then another letter. And, normally, we have our team, everyone calls back compliments and complaints. But this one I said, let me call back. She wrote beautiful letters. We end up meeting Jay, the rider. She ends up having the baby, and she ends up telling us how important our service meant to her and her livelihood. And I said, no, we get it. And she said, no, you don't get it. She's like, your drivers would sing to me every single night to make sure my daughter could hear the voice. And there wasn't a night that I was left hungry because your drivers who make $16 an hour would make sure I had food every day to feed myself and my pregnant belly. This Jay ended up naming her child after our driver, Unity. It was an amazing story. We ended up winning a microtransit award, NACO, National Associations of Counties, but it's not about that. It's about being able to help people. So this service is near and dear to my heart. It really changed the lives of some of our riders. Unfortunately, Jay saved up and bought a car. So I told Jay, you're supposed to keep the cars off the road, not put vehicles on the road. But she was able to save up and purchase a vehicle. We still talk to her all the time. But that's just one of many stories of what microtransit means to me and our team. Next slide, please. So this is that little cutout, that turquoise I was telling you about before. So it's the city of Fort Pierce. So city of Fort Pierce, apparently before I started, was coming to county transit looking for more transit services, and we didn't have the dollars to do it, nor did we, really have a great relationship with them back then. So we saw the freebie service when they did a press release. So yes, I do, Leona. Yep, we work with Indian River State College. We found out that Fort Pierce had a freebie service. They had their own service through a press release. So, of course, I called up there. By that time, we had a new county administrator. Our county administrator said, go speak to them. So I went over to them and I'm like, hey, why would you start transit in our county without talking to us? Now you have a different vehicle, a different app, different hours of service, and everything's different. They came back and said, well, we've been complaining to the county for years and nothing's ever been done. So we did it ourselves. And can you get us money? I'm like, okay, that's nice. So we wrote a grant form through the Florida Department of Transportation. We were able to fund it. So that's funded right now, 50% funded through the state, 50% funded through the Fort Pierce Redevelopment Agency. It's good until 2027. They're going to continue this program. Again, it's a different app, different service hours, and it's a different type of service. As you can see, there's 2 different colors in the map. There's inner zones and outer zones. So in order to use freebie, you have to be picked up or dropped off, in both zones. So picked up from a residential neighborhood and dropped off in a business zone and vice versa. So That's how that service works. It's does about 4,000 trips a month, this little tiny little area with 3 Teslas, and it's been very successful. And now we're working with the city to help continue that program. Next slide, please. This is just a timeline on how we get started with microtransit. So like I said, I started in 2020. The team prior to me they launched December of 2019. December of 2019, Zone 1 did 63 trips for the month. Today, the services do about 8,000 trips a month. So back in 22, we expanded Zone 1 a little bit and we switched software providers. Transloc got us to where we needed to get to, but then couldn't really help us out much further. So we did procurement. We ended up with VIA software, and VIA got us to where we needed to be, and then we needed more, so we switched again. But we switched over to VIA in 2022. We had South Florida Commuter Services. They're a division of the Florida Department of Transportation, and they helped do some outreach for us. We wanted outreach, even though it was a fare-free service, we still wanted to promote it. Well, we put our foot in our mouth because the next month the service doubled. So the outreach worked, but it worked a little bit too much. So huge increase in ridership. Shortly after that, in 2023, we launched a second zone, and then the following year, we launched the third zone. The most important part of this page is this software. We had multiple softwares for multiple services that didn't talk to each other. So we learned as we went along. So June 22nd of this year, we'll be switching our fixed route software. And now all 3 of our para, micro, and fixed route will all be one software, and they'll all be talking to each other. So especially important for us being a fare-free system. Obviously, someone rather take a door-to-door microtransit trip rather than getting on a fixed route bus. But hopefully later this year, if you go to book a microtransit trip, but there's a fixed route in the area, it'll either tell you to walk there if you can, or it'll take you to the fixed route bus, and then you'll take the fixed route bus to your destination. So it's going to really feed the fixed route system. Every vehicle that's on our road is ADA accessible. And like I said, all of our services are fare free. So this will help us become more efficient, more lean, and we'll be able to sustain this program longer by limiting the amount of microtransit trips that we're providing. That's pretty much it on that. I want to make sure I got everything. Yeah, that's everything on that. Next slide, please. Lessons learned is my favorite slide. So these are most of the lessons we learned. If I think of any more, I'll be sure to share with everyone. But a lot of things we did wrong. So please learn from our mistakes. So first and foremost, it took us 3 times to realize our zone sizes were too big, but we have 3 30 square mile microtransit zones, way too large. So zone size was a huge lesson learned for future, but we are also trying to cover a large part of the county to get our residents transportation. So it was like, pick your poison. Again, we're fare free, but we should have started microtransit with a fare, bottom line. So, here we are in 2026. They're talking about getting rid of property taxes. We have riders that are used to this service that depend on it for school, work, and doctor's appointments. And we have commissioners that are up for reelection, and I'm going to them saying, hey, we need to charge a fare so we can stop the bleeding. So if you're going to, I would definitely suggest start with a fare, a higher fare, just to make sure you're going in the right direction with that. I talked a little bit about those red dots earlier. Those are our connection points. So they're at county-owned facilities. So they're not all on the border, because the border, had I known we were going to have trouble asking a Wawa to let us be a connection point, I would have moved the zones where the border ended up with a county-owned facility or property, so we could have connection points at all county facilities. Like I said, they're all in county facilities now. They're just not on the border, so we'll have to drive into the next zone a little bit to drop that person off for them to get picked up to get to their destination. Again, the software for all modes of transportation, that's going to make us way more efficient, better customer service, better for our employees, better for our riders, app-based, AI, all that stuff. So we're looking forward to that. Wish we would have done that sooner. A big advantage, again, the only thing left on softwares is getting our fixed route over. But now that para and micro are on the same software, they talk to each other. So we're able to commingle our trips. So again, everything's ADA accessible. Our para drivers may be busy with dialysis appointments in the morning, and then they're freed up, and then they could help with microtransit rush hour trips. And then, microtransit slows down and they could help with the afternoon dialysis trip. So basically, commingling has made us way more efficient and more passengers per hour. One thing we're still trying to figure out is, again, being fare free, we have people booking multiple trips so they can get their ride. That's we have our no-show policy and cancellation policy. So when they get suspended riders, they usually just sign up under a different name and a different email. We're still trying to figure out how to police that. Our drivers know if someone's suspended for the most part, so they'll know if that person's with a different name or they know the address. But we're still trying to work through that. And then another big thing we're trying to work on is our riders book, they'll say they're an ADA rider and they have a guest. So then when we show up, because I apologize if I didn't say this before, it is a shared ride service. So people want to take this trip by themselves. So they just say they're with 3 people and then we show up and there's only 1 person there. So we're figuring out how to police that too. Right now, about 26% of our trips are shared rides. So at least a quarter of the trips have more than 1 customer on them, different accounts. Next slide, please. So a little bit, I know the last one was on AI, but just so like part of the reason we switched to TripSpark, is with their AI that they're using. And these are just 3 examples, but they're working on improving the accuracy of arrival times. We're also working on making travel time estimates based on actual trip data rather than estimated. And then my favorite part about it is they're using AI for the multimodal trip planning, which is going to be a game changer for us. I'm sorry, I missed the name. Is there a limit? I'm sorry, with the chat, I saw a question pop up. Hold on. Is there a limit on number of guests that arrive? Yes, there is a limit. So we have ADA accessible minivans. So yes, there is a limit. I think there fits 5 people on the vehicle. So yeah, it all depends. But yeah, there is a limit. I think we're allowed 2 guests per rider, and then there's a total limit altogether. So that's that. And then next slide, please. Here's our ridership. I don't know if anyone's seen this throughout COVID. I mean, all of our ridership went down during COVID, except fare-free microtransit. So that's our little bar graph on the left of the, some of them we've added a zone, obviously, so that increased, but that's our bar graph on ridership. So it's those numbers to your left. So again, 63 trips, December of 2019, and close to 100,000 trips a year today. Microtransit zone 1 obviously is the line on the top on the right, and then zone 2 is a blue one, and zone 3 is the green one. But yeah, they've kind of leveled off. We have about a 21 or 22-minute wait time, which is still reasonable, but we're at capacity. So we're going to talk about fares and other things in the future, whether it's you need to use it for jobs and doctor's appointments, but or during peak time. So we're working on some things for that. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just an idea of how we're funded. So on the left, you'll see we're made up of the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged, FDOT, the Federal Transit Administration, and we have something special here. I don't know how many counties have this or across the country, but we have an MSTU. We have a dedicated transit funding. So it's a municipal services taxing unit. So if you own a home or business in St. Lucie County, you will pay $25 per every $100,000 assessed value. So if you own a $200,000 home, you're going to put in $50 a year towards transit. So we've spoken, over the years, we have residents that don't use transit, and why do they have to pay for it? And, we've got that story pretty figured out, saying, we pray that you never have to use transit, and we really hope you never have to. But in the event, I'm one of the examples of my mother with Alzheimer's, but in the event you end up with Alzheimer's or dialysis or anything like that, and you put in $50 a year towards transit, even if you put in $100 a year towards transit for the last 30 years, you've given us $3,000. In the event you have to go to dialysis, to and from 3 days a week, it's a good investment. You'll make up your money very quickly once you use our services. To the right is a pie that I don't like looking at too much, because our TDA and ADA paratransit is slowly taking over the whole pie because we don't charge a fare and we have unlimited trips. But again, hoping to get some support. I'm happy that the board supports the unlimited transit, but I'm also asking for support because this is not going to be sustainable. That pie keeps getting bigger and bigger for our TD and ADA paratransit services. Next slide.
Adolfo, there is a question from
Sorry.
Nore one day. He says, please talk about overcoming the taxi cab exemption, the drug and alcohol monitoring requirements, if you have a chance.
So Jorge, that's a great question that I know I can't personally answer that. Hopefully maybe Carl will know when he speaks, but we sub out our work to MB Transportation. So we literally provide oversight. We buy all the vehicles, we own the vehicles, we receive grants, we provide outreach. So we, as far as we know, MV handles everything like they're supposed to. We do our audits and we have our triennial reviews, and they are following the process. So I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what that question means, and I apologize. Benefits. So huge benefits, right? Microtransit van, 70 grand, a Gillig 30-foot bus is 700,000. So we're definitely cheaper for us. We're obviously covering a way larger area than a fixed route bus. Riders are extremely happy to have door-to-door service. Again, we can get 10 vans for the price of one bus. It's really helpful for us too to find non-CDL drivers. We've been having issues in our county with CDL drivers, with trucking companies and Amazon tractor trailers and stuff like that. So hiring people without a CDL has been very, very helpful for us. And the biggest thing, which is going to come over the next 6 months and ongoing, is we're going to start feeding our fixed route system even more. So we're really excited about microtransit. We do have plans in our transportation development plan major update to add zone 4, 5, and 6, which will basically cover most of the entirety of the county except the rural area out west, which are just a few dirt roads. So yeah, hopefully by 2031 we have 6 microtransit zones covering St. Lucie County. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Adolfo.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the time. How about if you do have any other questions for Adolfo, put them in the chat. And then at the end, if we have additional time where your question requires discussion, we can address those then. In the meantime, how about if we go to Carl's presentation?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Again, my name is Carl Weckenmann. I am the Director of Planning and Development here at Lynx. Go to the next slide. So first, let's start with a little bit of background about Lynx. We serve 3 counties in Central Florida: Orange, Osceola, and Seminole. So there are other multi-county transit agencies in Florida, but we are unique among the larger transit operators of serving 3 counties. A little bit about Central Florida. I would imagine that most have been to the Orlando area, but we, a little bit different than some places in the state, do get a fair bit of our in-migration from countries in Latin America, so somewhat similar to the Miami area. And then many of the people that leave here become spillover to places like Lake County, Volusia County, and Polk County, which have very fast growing areas, largely because the congestion here, the cost of living within our counties just gets beyond what people are willing to pay. Adolfo mentioned sort of the why in paying for transit. So I want to point out the last bullet here on the slide. A large part of the state's revenue comes from sales and use tax. And one of the reasons Florida is able to keep a sort of low tax profile is the amount of that tax that gets paid by visitors, especially to an outsized portion in places like Orlando and Miami. That same tourist economy relies on hotels, restaurants, and attractions, and those places need lots of employees. And we essentially are taking a large number of those folks to their jobs every day. Universal, Disney, both actually fund parts of our transit service. So that's evidence that they see this as a critical piece. Next slide. So NeighborLink, which is what I will talk about today, which is our microtransit service, is one of 5 brands of service we operate. And NeighborLink is the 3rd largest in terms of the operating costs for our agency. However, it's a distant third. We spend about $4 million. Our local partners invest about $4 million in that service, compared to about a $150 million total contribution for all services. So the bus and our Access Lynx services are the lion's share of that. Next slide. So this is a little bit of information on how we perform, especially not just us, but also the large transit properties in Florida. And it is relevant for our discussion in terms of what mix of our service is bus versus NeighborLink. So you may not know, but the 6 largest bus operators here in the state of Florida are quite a bit more cost effective than peers throughout FTA Region 4. So this is all of the 12 largest FTA Region 4 bus operators. And as you can see, Lynx and some of the other Florida peers stack up very well. Our local operating cost per customer total for our bus service is about $7. Next slide. So now I will move specifically to our NeighborLink service, which is what this presentation is about. So we operate 9 NeighborLink routes or zones. Most of these are Monday through Saturday, but we do have a few of them that do not have the Saturday service. Most all day, but we do have 2 zones, Maitland and Intercession City, where we're serving a Sunrail station, and we match their peak times of AM and PM peak only. And then the next slide. We will carry about 100,000 total trips for this fiscal year on these 9 zones. So it's somewhat in line with what Adolfo is looking at in the 3 zones there in St. Lucie County. We have more zones that are a little smaller. Our zones, the smallest are about 7 square miles, and they go up to about no more than 20. And then our average cost to carry a customer on this service is a little over $27, which, while I mentioned on the bus side, we were well in line, if not lower cost than most peers. In this case, we're a little more expensive. Next slide. So operational history about the NeighborLink service. The service predates microtransit. It predates the term. And it's more of a growing into that type of service as opposed to launching as that type of service. So this began in 2008 as essentially a dial-a-ride service. And it was done as a cheaper replacement for bus routes that had to be canceled due to the economy during that time and tightening local government budgets. About 8 to 9 years ago, the service added the ability for people to use the app to reserve their rides. So at that point, it was at least a little bit more Uber-like, and it's been that way since. For most of our period, like St. Lucie County, we've contracted our service. However, in 2023, we took the service in-house. Our goal and our hope, expectation, I should say, was that would be a lower cost option for us. But based on our experience since that point, we no longer, we're really reconsidering that option, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I progress. Next slide. So our goal in seeking a vendor is to get a lower cost solution, but it's also to bring additional technology to the service for both customers and for the back end users, planning staff who are evaluating this service, and so that we can make changes as we see where things are used and where they're not, and how things need to be adjusted. And so, again, That plus the lower operating costs is why we're now looking to go back to a contracted model. Next. So our procurement process fairly lengthy over the past year. I will say that we've had some pre-operations hiccups. So the launch date, you see the start date was postponed. We had scheduled for this to launch in May, and perhaps even maybe have some tidbits on what we've learned from the early operations for this webinar. Unfortunately, that's not happened. So we are still sort of in a to be determined for the launch date for the new vendor as we negotiate with them some of the pre-operations issues we've had. But it is our hope that eventually this still becomes a contracted out-of-house service. Next slide. So with moving the service out and back to a contractor, there are some things. So the contractors we're looking for would be full turnkey, where we would not own the vehicles. And as such, there are vehicles that we currently operate, and they're these cutaway style vehicles that would need to be repurposed. Most logical is for those that still have useful life to move over to our Access Lynx service, which is our ADA paratransit service. And then with the existing operators, they've been given the opportunity, several options from our human resources department in terms of what's next for them. And most of them are choosing to actually get training, go into CDL classes, and join the bus operation crew for our larger vehicles. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we've had quite a good bit of changes to this service. So it feels like there's lessons learned and sort of lessons learned on the fly. So some of the key points that I would say is, with that early poll, we asked, what are you trying to accomplish, or what might you be trying to accomplish with a microtransit service? I think making sure that everybody is clear about that is critical, because it will not only determine the markets you're chasing, but if there's certain operating rules, how a service operates. Can you pre-book this service or not? Are there places you can pick the service up without a reservation? There's a whole number of sort of operating rules to a service that are highly dependent on what you're trying to achieve. So the decision can't be all things for all people. Otherwise, that becomes a little bit of a muddled mess. The service, we see it as a tool, one of the tools in our toolbox. And so as such, not every tool works in every situation. Specifically for us, in a place where we can have a couple of buses on a route that are carrying 100, 200 people a day. That might be a lower performing bus route for Lynx, but still that's probably too many people for microtransit to be a cost-effective replacement service. If you try to put too many people on this service, you're either looking to add additional vehicles, additional resources, which means the cost savings you were trying to achieve will go away, or you'll see service levels decrease as people have longer wait times and the like. Technology is a very big piece of this type of service. So with our fixed route, we have things like mobile apps where people can see their buses. But in some sense, that's still a bit of an auxiliary piece, an accessory, if you will, for that type of service. But here, it's sort of a core element. Your customers will have as much experience using the app as they will with the driver and the vehicle itself. And then the technology, picking the correct technology is important because all the decisions that get made in microtransit in terms of balancing the convenience for the customer, the cost effectiveness for the agency. Those are sort of big strategic goals, but the way they're implemented is the way that the technology is applied, and its ability to sort of meet your goals in that respect is important because it's making those decisions for you. And then finally, this is true with any bus route or microtransit service that we do. It's not an end in itself. It needs to feed the larger network. The goal is not, we could make a lot of things look good by taking established customers from, another route that's successful, et cetera. But the goal, whenever we're implementing these or wherever we're switching from fixed route to one of these, is how does it improve the net overall mobility of our community? And I think that is the last slide and concludes my portion. So thanks to everyone. And I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Carl. Yeah, it looks like we're going to have some time for some questions. Before we launch into the questions, we have just one more word cloud. What we wanted to do was compare what your impressions of mobility on demand were at the beginning, and compare it to after the presentations, which might have expanded your thinking about what it is. So answer the same question. Now, if you were to describe mobility on demand in 1 to 3 words, how would you describe it? Expensive. Okay, but still popular. Great. Accessibility. Yeah, some different answers. Very interesting. Much needed. Yeah, for sure. All right. All right. Thank you for participating in that word cloud. It looks like we have a question. We have a question from Jorge Puente. He asks for both presenters. Does the TNC providers, transportation network company providers, do they provide pickup and drop off traditional address format? So for us, we had to ask to get that type of data instead of coordinate data.
Are you speaking of the contractors or some other TNC? So for the rides that are scheduled on our service, we do have pickup and drop off location, and it's both an address format and coordinate data. In the planning world, we would prefer the coordinate data. It makes it easier for us to digest and put into maps. But then, okay. So we have no partnership though with Uber and Lyft. So I wouldn't be able to speak to any TNC data.
Yeah, and our microtransit service is run through MV Transportation with county-owned vehicles, and we use addresses. They could either book through the app, or they can call us at our customer service number to book the trip.
All right. I have a question. Adolfo, in your presentation, you had talked about the connection points where a person using the microtransit service gets on another microtransit vehicle from a connection point. And one of the problems in establishing those points was that the property owners on that service line had concerns. And so you ended up having to put the connection points on county property. I was just curious, did they share with you specifically what their concerns were?
So the main one was Wawa, and I don't know if the local person just didn't want to make a decision, but every time we went to speak to them, they had to get with someone from corporate. Every time we got a hold of someone from corporate, they didn't get back to us. So to be completely fair and honest with you, we just gave up and we said we'll just go a mile into the zone. But that was only really the main one there that made the most made the most sense was to have that over there at Wawa. But that was it.
I will say
Okay.
that whether it be on microtransit or bus, a lot of times using a facility, a privately owned facility for something like this, um, raises alarm bells on liability for them. And so it's always possible that seems to be a place that often gets people to stop, whether it be bus service or micromobility, more people means more liability.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jeremiah had a question too, Sarah.
Yeah. So Jeremiah asks, what have you found to be the ideal vehicle form factor for microtransit to meet the most combined rider needs?
So for us, in most cases, that's the type of van that Adolfo had showed in his presentation. It allows it to be ADA accessible, but it is essentially the smallest vehicle that you can run and still have, the accessible factor for those who need it. We do have at least one case in our service area where we have about 6 customers per hour and some peaking of that, where the cutaway, which is the larger vehicle, is the more appropriate. But in most cases, for us, it's the smaller van.
And for us, all of our services are run with the minivan for area regional transit. Fort Pierce uses the Teslas for their area. And then there's also in Port St. Lucie, there's a couple of gated communities where the home builder had to provide transportation. So they use Freebie as well. And they're like hybrid. I want to say they're golf carts, but I know they're not golf carts. They're like big vehicles. Like Carl, you know the name of those?
Well, I know that I think the company Circuit runs
Yes.
a downtown circulator here, and you're right. It's like a hybrid, roadworthy-ish golf cart.
Yeah, so we have that. And I tend to see, obviously Carl's got a way bigger area, a lot more residents and visitors than St. Lucie County, but I don't believe we've ever had it where the van was full. We'll have more that we can provide a trip because the vans are all being used by riders, but it's never that there's too many people in the van. It's just that there's too many people using the service. So vans are our biggest size vehicle.
Okay. I have a question. So, have you heard anyone say to you that, well, I don't use transit, so I should not have to pay for transit? What would you say to
Lots.
that?
Well, I would go back to, for those who do, at least in Central Florida, they're critical to our economy. Um, you know, Even if you don't work in the tourism business, in a hotel, in a theme park or whatever, um, people around you might, and that becomes obviously our economy would collapse without it. And for many of those workers, and to be honest, they're some of the most supportive entities in our region for public transportation. So that should, communicate to others. If those who are critical to our economy say they need it, then yeah, maybe we do need this.
And for us, we have a lot of retirees in St. Lucie County, so they truly believe they shouldn't pay taxes for schools or transit. Like they really feel they shouldn't be paying. They don't have any young kids. They don't use our services. So I try to explain to them, again, hopefully you'll never need this service in the future, but in the event you do, it's free for you. And another big thing is we've tried a different approach this year, talking to some of those residents that do complain about paying for transit is, had we not had the million trips a year we do in our service, there'd be that many more vehicles on the road and there'd be that much more traffic. So we try to use the amount of vehicles we're taking off the road by providing transportation. And we also use the app to guideline. I think they say for every dollar invested in the transit, it's $5 economic return to the economy. So whatever the stats are, we use them a lot too as well. And a lot of our trips go to work, school, and work and school and doctor's appointments. So those stats don't lie either. So
Great. Jeremiah has another question. He asks, what is the average number of passengers that you see for each ride? And do you see more single riders or more groups?
For us, we have a handful, and when I say a handful, probably fewer than 5 locations that do produce group trips. They're generally institutional, and they're generally too far from, say, a major arterial for them to access our bus service. But that is the exception. For most of us, it's more of the single rider or small group, 1 or 2 customers per trip.
Same for us. And then the only other thing is like the shared ride, meaning it's 2 different clients. You're going from point A to B, and then someone books a trip to go in between your trip. We'll pick you up and bring you and drop you off. We have 26% of our trips are shared ride. Again, 2 different accounts. But as far as like multiple people under the same account, again, we usually have people going to school or work. They're just taking a ride to get to school or work.
Okay. Can you speak to the issue of balancing the resources that you have with customer service?
Say that one more time, Sarah.
Yeah, a question relating to balancing the level of resources you have to provide this service, balancing that against providing the best customer service. So for example, as ridership increases, then you get to a point where you need to add a van. Is it, how do you balance those 2 things?
I can speak for us. So again, our main thing, generally I base the adding a vehicle, number one, if we have it in our budget. And then the other thing is on our wait time, right? So again, at a 22-minute wait time, we feel like we're reasonable. We do allow pre-booking as well. So our service has been sustainable. And now we're at the max of amount of vehicles we could put on the road. We generally do not get a lot of complaints because we're giving out free Uber trips throughout the county. So I think we have a little, although we do have people that do complain that are not paying a fare. But for the most part, people are appreciative of our service. But that is why, like, this year is our big year where we're getting in front of our board of charging a fare, of limiting the recreational trips. So we have a lot of things we're working on so we could continue to sustain this for years, so we can continue to give good customer service. And that's like another thing. Our board's happy that we're not getting complaints and said, well, why change it? And I'm like, well, when it becomes inconvenient, when someone starts getting late to work or they can't get a trip for something that's important, we're going to get a lot of calls. So we are still ahead of the curve. But if we don't fix it in 2026 and we talk next year, I'll let you know about bad customer service, unfortunately.
Great, thank you.
And so for us, it comes down to the budget, and there's no tax collected on behalf of Lynx. So this is the conversation we have with our funding partners at the different counties, Orange and Osceola, where we provide microtransit service. And it's not a totally different thing than what we see on our bus service. As congestion increases, slows our buses in order sometimes to just preserve the service that you have and limit wait times, etc. You have to make an additional investment or look at places that are inefficiencies that could fund it. But I mean, right now, not a lot of our partners are looking to spend more money. So we're probably in a position, at least politically now and financially, that we can't really entertain too much of that. But it's a legitimate question. Even if there's money to be had, does it make sense to keep doing that if we need 4 or 5 vehicles versus going back to a bus service? Those are the sorts of questions that we're looking at all the time.
Okay, great. We might have time for just one more quick question from Indira Chambers, and it's a question specifically for St. Lucie. She asked, how many registered active riders do you have, and what percentage of those riders use the service at least once a month? I don't know if you have those figures handy, but
I would love to tell you I could spit it out, Indira, but I just muted you and put the camera off, and I called Kathy, who's one of my team members, and I got an answer. So
oh, wow.
we have just under 10,000 active, just under 10,000 riders signed up, and about 500 of them use the service. So 510, about 5% of the riders that are signed up use the service, and 500 people out of 400,000 residents use the service. And there's 10,000 people signed up and 500 use it actively.
Wow, that's terrific. Thank you so much, Adolfo Covelli and Carl Weckenmann, for your time and sharing your expertise about microtransit. I want to point our participants today to next month's webinar, which we are actively planning now. You can go to the website, commuterservices.com, to register for free. Be sure and tell your fellow transportation professionals to also participate as well. And also, you can access the recordings to these courses as well at that same location. Please fill out a short evaluation just to let us know how we're doing and how we can improve on this webinar series as we go forward. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and we thank the Florida DOT Transit Office for sponsoring this webinar series.
Thank you.
Right.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank
Way
you.
to time that right, Sarah. Exactly 60 minutes. Great job.
There we go.
Thank you, everybody.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.